Okay, so here we are again, dealing with the concept of not how to build a certain shelter or what kind of shelter you should make, but where do you choose to be your shelter location when you are stuck in a situation where you're going to be there overnight. This time I wanted to bring us up into the snow. It's days like today that can be so misleading. All of this beautiful, beautiful sunshine. I'm too hot in the clothing I'm wearing. I'm going to be taking some of this off. Because if you sweat, you know the rest of it. You spend the day out in sunshine like this, and hang on. Future's so bright I gotta wear shades. You're lulled into complacency because it's beautiful. You're gonna be fine. I mean, if I had to get through the night and it was like this, easy peasy. That is the hard lesson to learn about survival overnight, in a winter situation especially, but really in all situations, and that is just how cold it gets at night. And people aren't aware very often of that because we don't spend that much time out overnight in the woods. We crawl into our tents if we're people who camp, or we go into our homes. But when you're stuck out, it's a whole different story. Even if you're in the jungle, even if you're in the Kalahari Desert, it gets cold at night. Clearly, it'll be cold here tonight for sure. I look for the places that are going to be a little easier on my walking, my climbing, my feet. And is that going in the snow? Sometimes it's going in the snow. Sometimes it's finding open patches like this to walk on. I am looking for ways to walk across snow that without the snowshoes I'm going to fall in a lot. But if I can skirt the deep snow and stay in my boots, it can be less taxing on me until it isn't, basically. A lot of times in a survival situation, you go with what works until it doesn't. Yeah, but how do you choose where to set up for the night? It's a trickier question than you might think. There we go. That's better. Hello. All right, guys. Yes, I have my survival consultants with me right here. Good boy. Rule of thumb, of course, is if you don't have to stand, sit down. If you don't have to sit, lie down. If you don't have to be awake, sleep. That's very important in a survival situation, conserving your energy. So, at the moment, I'm going to sit here and catch my breath and think about what it is I want to say about a location like this. Such a misleading day. I mean, so incredibly beautiful. One of the things that's really sort of a good exercise to do is to go and get yourself in the shade, because while you're out in the sun, you're convinced that the day is beautiful. And when you think that the day is beautiful, you're also going to fool yourself into believing that the night is probably beautiful as well, or going to be. But here I am in the shade, instantly. I'm chilling down, automatically. I'm sitting right on the snow. Dumb move. All right, so the big thing here is going to be keeping yourself positioned in places that are warm. This sun is brilliant and we can go enjoy this for the rest of the day, no problem. We don't have to build a shelter. We don't have to worry about anything until the sun goes down. And then it is horrible. it'll be frigid. So, I mean, the truth of the matter is, when should I start building a shelter? A couple hours ago. That's a sad part of, if you are focused on you must have a shelter built for your survival ordeal overnight, you can't start at 4 p.m. You know, generally speaking, in the winter, something like this, I'd like to start about 11 a.m. and I'm good at it. So what do? You really have to suss out all your variables in your situation and recognize whether or not you're going to be stuck for the night, and are you at that point, say at 11 a.m. in a place where making a shelter would be a good idea. It's a good place to be. However, let's just make that assumption now that for whatever reason, now is the time when you need to hunker down for the night. As always, in any overnight situation, there are two things to consider. Or actually, one thing to consider with two answers. Either you can get a fire going, or you cannot. Two different ways of looking at how you're going to get through that night. Huge difference in potentially where you're going to set up your shelter. It might be the same location, might not be. Oftentimes it's not. How much longer you search for a location, if you can't get a fire going, spending the time looking for the perfect location might be something worth putting a few hours into. If you can get a fire going, you have some forgiveness there. For me, it becomes more about wind blockage and a fuel source. So let's look around. Good girl. Good girl. In this particular spot, I thought, well, I'll just go up into the woods here and take a look at what I've got. So no real reason for choosing this location other than I might be kind of stuck here. So how would I deal with it? Well, obviously I'm looking at quite a steep incline here. The camera won't show it, but it's actually very, very steep. Enough that I could toboggan down this hill and have a lot of fun. But a few things to think about here. Right in this spot are these trees. So overhanging and coverage from tree boughs can be a really great thing to consider for sure. And in this case, I've got some good coverage. If I was dealing with rain or snow, then having these kind of evergreen, these conifer overhangs is a real great advantage. Obviously in the winter, most of the broadleaf trees, all those leaves are going to be down on the ground, but evergreens, they can give you some nice protection from the snow that's coming down overhead. Hopefully snow, freezing rain is miserable in these situations. By the way, a word on tree wells. I have seen over and over again in so many survival books the concept of, well listen, just go up to one of those evergreen trees and find the tree well and dig down in there, and it makes a great ready to go shelter. I have been in territory like that so many times in my life. You think I can find one of those? It's never as perfect as they make it in the book. It's not totally true. How about 5% of the time it's as nice as it looks in the books, but 95% of the time you can't find those tree well shelters. They're very difficult to find, and when you do find them, they tend to be not what you're looking for. You dig down, you get to the base of the tree, you find it's all jagged rocks or something down by the base of the tree, so it's not even a place where you can sit. They can work when they're there and they're perfect, kind of like finding a cave. So it's a luck of the draw in a situation like that. So do not count on finding tree wells in the forest. You're more likely to find them in the mountainous ranges. I will say that much. If you're in the mountains, then you're more likely to find a tree well that can work for you. But in the regular sort of flattish forests or forests of Ontario, that has not been a place where I've seen them very often at all. You just don't get the snow. You need that mountain snow for that. Okay, so what am I dealing with this? Actually, you know what? I'm going to show you where I am, and you tell me where you would want to put the shelter. And never mind the road down there. It's the road I came on to get up here, so just forget that exists. Let's pretend it's not there. You've got trees here. This is not as flat as it looks. This is actually quite a bit of an incline. I could toboggan down here, even though the camera never shows inclines very well. So let's just pretend that could be a river, or it could be just a flat area. So, all right. Okay, so it opens up there. It's wide open up there. Okay. So we're looking at, got a bunch of rock area over there. Okay. And back to here. Okay, what did you think? Where would you go? So what I want to do is look at two scenarios here. There are two incredibly different ways of looking how you might have to spend the night. With a fire, without a fire. So let's assume at first, no fire. You have no matches, no way of getting a fire going, and forget about rubbing two sticks together because you can't do it. So where would you go? Would we go up to those rocks? This is when I would say no. I wouldn't go up to the rocks. They're exposed, they're way out there. If I were to go and sit up by those rocks right now in the sunshine, it would be glorious. Get my back against the wind, against the rock, which has its back against the wind. Absolutely beautiful. Great place to go and spend the afternoon. But before you know it, it's 4:30, 5 o'clock. Sun's going down, and it's going to be frigid up there by 8 o'clock p.m. So, no fire. Again, remember, can't get a fire going. Coming down here, anything to do with fire material is pointless for me. So it doesn't matter that there are all these dead branches and that, because I can't get a fire going. So, okay, that doesn't matter so much. It's really a matter of looking at the level of protection I'm going to get from the materials that are at hand. Cool air is going to be dropping down from up there, and it's going to continue going. So we're kind of mid-range on the hill, which is actually maybe not that bad. It's something I always point out is that, the bottom of the hill is where all the cold collects. The top of the hill is where it gets really windy. So I've always found that somewhere, not in the middle, but let's say down from the top, out of the wind. When you know you're out of the wind from the top area, that's kind of the sweet spot that I find if I'm in a really hilly and mountainous terrain. There is a thing about trees, by the way, in the forest. There is a temperature difference when you can get underneath trees, those with branches coming around. There's a slight temperature difference. I discovered this with the mesquite trees in the desert, for example. It could be 10 degrees difference between being at the base of a tree and being out and away from the base of a tree. So, all right, 10 degrees is a lot. So in a situation like this, I am not going to go up higher because I don't want to get myself up in the wind. And I'm looking here, I can't get a fire going, so the firewood doesn't matter. It's late in the day, so I'm not going to put a lot of energy into building a big shelter. Again, I cannot emphasize that enough. Everybody thinks they're going to make some sort of beautiful shelter or snow shelter, Quincy or igloo or A-frame or lean-to. Yeah. When you're going out in a recreational sense, in a real survival scenario, you're already scared, you forgot to do any of this stuff, and now it's 4:30 and the sun's setting. There's no shelter being made. You're spending the night doing nothing, sitting still. If it's a full moon and you know your way out, maybe you can keep traveling. There are times when I will say that as far as getting through the night is concerned, I have chosen instead to travel because I knew I could not get lost. Maybe it was a full moon, maybe I was on a trail, and maybe I had a flashlight. And I chose that over trying to hunker down and sleep through the night because I was just going to be too cold. So that is an option. I did that in the Kalahari Desert, actually. I traveled by night and tried to hide in the shade and sleep during the day because it was too hot in that scenario. One thing I want to point out is this snow here. Now this snow is really only about 1.5 feet deep. So the concept of me making a big snow wall and using that as insulation from the wind or protection from the wind is out the window. All right, first of all, it's late in the day, but even if it was early in the day, it'd be a lot of work for me to work with this much snow, 1.5 feet, that's already crusted over and half melted, to try to build a snow wall with this stuff. That would be a mess. And it would be very much a drag on my energy. It would pull a lot of my energy away from me, which would make me that much colder through the night. So wind blocking from snow like this, I can make a weak attempt at it, but I can't count on it. Right now I can feel a breeze coming right down the hill, right on the back of my neck. So I can tell, okay, all right, the wind's probably going to come down from there. So now I can take a look at these trees and I can think, all right, well, I can get on the other side of them depending on where the wind is coming from. And once again, I can't let this sun fool me. That's a big thing in trying to pick your shelter location, is do not be fooled by the sunshine. You have to look at your spot and think, what is that spot going to be like at 2 a.m.? It's a big difference because 2 p.m., 2 a.m., two different shelter locations. Right down that spot right there, it's sort of a bit of a gully. I like that. That's a windbreak. So I'm probably going to sit in somewhere like that maybe. I can use the natural shape of the hill and the natural snow that's down there as my wind block. If that doesn't work, I've got these big trees over here that I can try to get behind. All right, but as for these branches and everything, you can say, oh, great bough material. I've seen that. You do that on your show. Yes, and this is great. But there's not a lot of it. I'm going to use all of it. Everything that's here, I'm going to take all of this, and maybe I don't have a knife or a hatchet. I'm breaking it with my bare hands, so I can only get what I can get. Just as I'm talking to you, the wind is just like whipping down on me right now. And that is cold. So you see, you've got a scenario like this without a fire, it's going to be tricky. So let's go up the hill a little further, and I'm going to talk about what if you can get a fire going. How does that change all of this? How does this change this situation? Maybe I'll go up there and change my mind about this spot. That's something else to think about. If I'm stuck here, I'm stuck here. But I often will find my shelter location, say, okay, this is good. Before I commit to it, before I start building or setting up for the night or whatever, I will do a reconnaissance mission walk, a circle, all the way around the perimeter. And a lot of times when I've done that, I've gone, oh, hang on, this spot's way better. Or, yeah, the first place I found, that's it. That's all I've got to work with right now. So let's go take a look. Really have to, balance the energy you're spending versus the payoff. Wind, your number one concern. Always, always wind. That is always my worry. First the wind, then everything else after that. Now here's a spot I like for a number of reasons. First of all, still sort of halfway point of the hill, but just being able to have ground to sit on rather than snow is a great advantage. And there's a big rock right here. It's still a little bit steep, but I could move some of that snow, move those branches, probably flatten this area out here. This isn't bad actually. You can kind of see drops way off, gets very steep. So again, all I did in this situation now was I walked about, not more than 100 feet here. And I found, well, if you said stay here the night, Les, I'd pick this as this becomes my plan A. Under a protected tree here, there's a rock, even though I do not have matches. There's ground instead of snow. Automatically, that's going to be warmer throughout the night than the snow itself is. When it comes to the snow, well, no matter what, I need to stay up off the ground. And so no matter what, I'm going to need all these boughs, and I'm going to need to sit on them, sleep on them. But it's harder if I'm on snow. There's just that much more cold coming up through them. So they've got to be thicker. But this is ground, and it's been warmed up a lot. It's melted and warmed and dried. So some advantages here. I'm on the ground right here, and being on the ground, I'm gonna sit down, is much more comfortable than sitting on the snow. So that just makes me feel better. I feel more welcomed here. Now, for all my talk of where the wind is coming from and keeping the wind at my back with this forest in behind me, that's great, but what if it turns and the wind decides to come from this direction? Which it very, very well can. Well, what that means now I'm getting the wind blown right on me. So in a place where I cannot escape wind no matter what, I'm looking for a location where I can bed down for the night, but I may have to get up in 4 hours and go basically 180 degrees. I might have to get to the other side of something because the wind has changed. I've seen the wind change its direction twice, 3 times in one night. And so you can't just go to bed and think you're going to be set. You have to think about what could happen in terms of the weather, especially the wind, when you set yourself up. And I said this before, and I'm going to repeat it again. Remember, where I want to sit right now, right in this moment, is not necessarily the right place to be overnight, because I'd like to just be sitting out in the sun. But I need to find a cubby hole. Imagine you just are going to be sitting still for the night, not in a shelter, just sitting out. That is really the way to think about it, because you just may not have time to make a shelter. And you may not have a couple big chocolate labs to snuggle up with, like I do. Come on, pups. spots like this are actually not good to walk close to because the snow is going to be weak right here. So you want to often keep away from where the trees are and rocks, stumps, things like that. You can punch down in. Whereas sometimes the snow right out in the open is nice and hard. Sometimes it's not. You gotta look at every scenario. Oh, beautiful big trees here. Remember again, there is more warmth at the base of a tree than there is 30 feet away from it. Now, in snow, you want to think about avalanche area. I know that right now here, I'm okay. Might be a little bit chance there, but from me down, absolutely this could be an avalanche. I don't know what this grade is. I'm gonna guess, I don't know, maybe 30. So this could be right in the zone, and if I'm set up my shelter down the bottom of this, if this were to go through the night, yeah, it's a whole other story, isn't it? Definitely the change of the seasons can be a predictor of possible avalanches because the snow is unstable. Let's see what we've got here. Do we care if a place is beautiful? Do we care if it's aesthetically pleasing? A lot of you probably want me to answer yes, but I don't. I really don't. What I care is that I'm going to be warm through the night. That's what I care about. And if it's ugly but warm, I'm good. If it's beautiful but freezing cold, who cares? All right, so this is looks like a little bit of a stream bed I'm walking over here. I want to be real careful that you don't break through. You really have no way of knowing just how deep down this goes or how unstable this is, but I'm going to take my chance and go across here. All right, so you see, now I'm sinking in. So for whatever reason, this little area here, the way the sun hits it or doesn't hit it, the snow's not as stable. So now my walks are rougher and harder. I have to think about that. How much effort is it going to take me just to move around in a certain area? This is warm. This is warm to the touch. I mean, quite warm, you know? So what's that mean? I've got heat reflecting off of me. I mean, this moment right here, this is where I come to catch my breath, take a breather, have a rest, because it's so beautiful. And the view is beautiful. And so you get that moment of, well, I'm in a bad situation, but this is gorgeous. Surely this has got to be a nice spot for a shelter location. If I cannot get a fire going, what do I really have here to work with? You know what? There's too much snow. I can't get to a ground area, not really, not without a lot of work. And why did I come all the way up here to these rocks? Because, well, what about if you can get a fire going? What changes then? Well, if you look back to the first place I was, what became my plan A, if I look at that spot, I actually saw that there was a rock there too. So that's great because I can get a fire going and reflect off the rock all night. Now, on the other hand, I'm looking here and I'm seeing some firewood that's big, but can I get that firewood down? Can I push that down? Is it rotten enough that I can push it down? If I can push that big tree down, or there's others like it, well, that's going to be very important to me. If I can get a fire going here against these rocks, yeah, maybe, but you know what? On the other side there was just simply less snow to deal with, I should say, and more of a spot where I can get a fire going up against a rock, and there was firewood not that far away either. Was there enough? Well, that's another story. But maybe I would even go so far as to come back to this tree, because it's only about 100 yards away, knock that tree down and drag it over to the better shelter location. So again, you want to think about this concept of having working trails. A working trail that goes to your firewood supply, a working trail that goes to your insulation materials supply. The best thing ever is if you don't have to walk anywhere to get this stuff, and it's all right where you're going to stay the night. The evergreens in this area and getting all of this branch work here to use as boughs, sure, it's all possible. But if I don't have an axe or a saw, it's a lot of work. The better boughs that you want to look for when you're looking for shelter location and you're going to use evergreen boughs as your insulation are small trees. You want Christmas trees, those 6-footers. If you can find an area filled with fresh, new, young 10-year-old trees, then you're in the money, because those are easy to break, easy to gather after you've asked permission and offered your thanks, of course, and they will help you get through the night with their warmth. Because when it's snow out like this, you're not going to be gathering leaves. That is not going to be part of your insulation material. It's going to come down primarily to evergreen boughs. And the ones on the bottoms of the big trees are always harder to get. Remember that. The evergreen boughs on the bottoms of the big trees, they're all within reach. You're going to take them, but they're harder to gather than the ones with the small Christmas trees. So you want to look for that little mini forest of small Christmas trees. All right. Gosh, that's beautiful. A lot of this stuff here, nice and easy to grab. So there's a nice decent amount of firewood right here, but will this get me through the night? No, it won't. And that's something that you have to become really familiar with doing, is estimating just how much firewood you have. And that's why I'd always rather find a big, huge, dead, dry log to burn a fire around or on, rather than gathering all these branches, because these are going to burn up really quick on me. They're dry, they're beautiful for getting the fire going, but they're going to go away. Similar things to consider here as you do have to consider in the warm weather or in a place where there is no snow. Wind, how cold it's going to get at night, wind from all the different directions, how you're going to keep yourself up off the ground. And so that insulation, whether it's leaves or boughs, is vital. All of that has to come into your decision-making process before you ever start talking about making a lean-to or an A-frame, or in this case a quinzee or an igloo. No, you've got to find the right location first. So hopefully what I've given you here, oh, for goodness sakes, my dog thinks that she's an otter. I got one of those chocolate labs that likes to slide down on her belly down the snow. Yeah, in that case. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, signing off as far as the shelter location goes. There's still a lot more to learn and know about shelter location, and I will be in different ecosystems where I can do that. So for example, if I were in the Arizona desert, I'd be talking about the mesquite trees and how much they are, they can be 10 degrees warmer under a mesquite tree than it is outside from the branches of a mesquite tree. Little things like that are really important to know, because the bottom line is you have to get through the night. And it's not about pretty shelters, it's about getting through the night. So hopefully this helps. If you've got any questions, put them down below in the underneath there. You know where to put them. And that is me that's answering, so I'll try to answer the good questions. If you put down a bunch of crap, stupid comments, I'm just going to delete them. But if you put down some interesting questions or your own points, your own thoughts on the things that I've said, it's okay to disagree with me. Tell me why you disagree or what you found. For example, when I talk about tree wells, you might say, oh, I find tree wells all the time. Just not in my case, I haven't. You might say, oh, you got to build an igloo, it's so easy. Nah, not in my mind. So yeah, go ahead, feel free to comment, and whatever you do, please subscribe to the channel, because that will help me to keep these going. It's all about algorithms at that point. But for me, it's all about teaching you good stuff. And so I want to keep doing it. And so please subscribe to the channel. Keep watching. And go check out the playlist, man. There's so much more here. If you've just tuned into this, you're just seeing this, there's hundreds of other videos on survival and outdoor adventure and so on. And mostly my pursuits as an artist, really, as well as a teacher on this website. Go to the playlist. Look up, check out the Beyond Survival series, all the Survivorman catalog. If you're into Bigfoot, there's a Bigfoot playlist. There's a couple, actually. And then eventually my music, too. But either way, check it all out, man. It's all there for you. And it's all for free. So, all right. Thanks for listening, guys. If I think of more things to tell you about shelter location choices, I will get to them. Bottom line, and the last word on that is there are a lot of variables involved. And there is no such thing ever in saying this is the ideal knife, this is the ideal way to start a fire, this is the ideal place to make a shelter, this is the ideal shelter to make. None of that exists in a survival situation. It's all about the variables, what you're dealing with. And so what you have to learn how to do is make a good, well-informed decision so that you can then become proactive. Don't wait. And I will leave you with this. If you are certain you have to hunker down for the night and you are quite certain you can make a shelter, don't leave it too late. That's the biggest mistake everybody makes. They wait till it's too late. Legitimately, man, start at noon, and that can make a big difference as far as whether or not you make it through the night. You don't get as far if you're on the move. You have to make that decision. Good luck out there.